Midnight Cowboy is the 1969 Best Picture winner, directed by John Schlesinger, starring podcast debutantes Jon Voight and Dustin Hoffman. It was the first and only X-rated film to ever win Best Picture at the Academy Awards. It's one of the most respected and controversial wins in Academy Award history. And today we are going to talk about it on the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Today, I am joined by my co-host, not guest host, Shane Mulvaney. Shane, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well, Harry. Looking forward to getting into, like you said, one of the most controversial Best Picture winners. Even though I think it's actually, while I wasn't a huge fan of the film, like I liked the film, I wasn't like blown away by it by any means, but I definitely think it's like an understandable choice for the Academy to get into, and quite admirable in a lot of ways considering its subject matter.
Yeah, definitely. The film came out in a very interesting, honestly, one of the most interesting times in US cinema. Basically, everybody was saying, fuck you to the establishment, and we were getting angstier films upon angstier films. Films like this, films like High Mom with Robert De Niro, films like what else was a big film at the end of the 60s, early 70s? Easy Rider. These sort of films were all basically films that were Hollywood's way of saying, you know, in and around Nam, that we're questioning things. And people want to see films like that. People want to see edgier films. People want to see real films. And this film is real. This film is edgy. And yeah, as I said, it is the podcast debut of Jon Voight, but it's the podcast debut of Dustin Hoffman, who is one of the best actors of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Shane, what did you think of Midnight Cowboy?
Yeah, I did enjoy it. I wasn't particularly blown away by it, but I definitely think the content and the subject matter is quite bold. Definitely got the kind of the queer subtext that the film is going for. The film is particularly John Wayne in particular made quite a homophobic remark about the film. I'm not going to repeat it, but it's out there if people want to kind of go and check out what he said, which I wouldn't advise, but anyway. John Schlesinger, the director, he was a British guy, but he was gay himself, and yeah, he was quite obviously proud of the fact that they wanted to make a film that would explore these kind of themes, but also because of the time period that we were in, it wasn't necessarily they kind of have to hide it quite a bit. So it is subtext more than actual text, if you want to call it that. But yeah. It's pretty obvious that what they're going for, particularly in the character of Joe Buck. But I think even to a certain extent with Rizzo as well, because people have kind of read in the fact that maybe there was like a queer love dynamic going on between these two guys. I'm not sure I could see a love story myself between these two guys in particular, between each other. But I do think each of them individually, where there's definitely they're definitely much buried kind of maybe I want to say shame. Obviously they shouldn't be ashamed, but maybe shame because of the fact that maybe they're both kind of closeted gay guys who obviously are afraid to talk about the fact that maybe they're gay. So I think personally I'd like to see your thoughts on this. Maybe I didn't necessarily read in a gay romantic subtext, even though they're very, very good friends. But what I did see was, I think, two guys who were closeted gay guys, and that's what the film is going for, in my opinion. What about you?
I definitely think they're gay for each other.
Oh, okay,
I
right.
really, really like this movie. I think in like the gay panic era of
Yeah,
the USA, this film was such a great middle finger to the likes of John Wayne. I love that he's literally
yeah,
dressed as a cowboy. Fuck you, John
yeah,
Wayne.
exactly.
But yeah, I love this movie. I definitely read that subtext, especially there's like one particular scene where because I kind of got the vibe that we weren't gonna find out. But then when Ratzo was visualizing him in Florida
Yeah,
with
that's yeah,
Joe, the flashback originally starts with him and Joe running shirtless together on the beach, and I was like, oh, is he actually gonna like outwardly tell us that this is what he thinks? And then it's women shouting Ratso, Ratso, or sorry, Rizzo or Rico.
Yeah.
He didn't like being called Ratso. So then it kind of muddles the dream a bit.
Yeah.
But as well, like, just again, interesting with a dream, because there's a lot of dreams and flashbacks in this movie. A dream that Joe has, where he's having a very traumatic
Yeah.
PTSD nightmare about an incident that happened with him and a girl. He keeps seeing Rico in this dream over and over again. I just thought that was a really interesting bit of I don't know. I think the film's really well edited. I really like the editing of this film, particularly the dream sequences and the flashbacks and how they're intercut with things. Other scenes as well with like present day stuff is like different scenes are edited together. I really like the editing of this film. I think it's fantastic. But overall, yeah, I was really into this. I really, really liked it, and I just want to give Joe Buck a hug.
Yeah, no, I totally agree about the.
Just felt bad for the guy.
I know he goes through a lot, as does Ratso. To be fair to him, as does Ratso.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But he should probably like have a shower before.
It's true. No, I totally agree with you about the editing, because it's particularly in the dream sequences. Oftentimes you'll see a dream sequence where like it's trying to go for it's trying to go for this kind of vibe of it's trying to reveal a lot of information, but then it just, because it's not edited particularly well, it just becomes confusing. Whereas there's one dream sequence in particular where it's very, very fast paced. They're cutting back and forth very, very quickly. But I think the film is in that moment conveying everything it wants you. You're getting everything the film wants you to get at that moment, in terms of what the character of Joe Buck has been through in the past. Very, very traumatic incident, and obviously, like you said, the fact that he is growing closer to Retzo. So
Yeah, no, I really like this. And if you're into the sort of angsty late 60s, early 70s era of US cinema and you haven't seen Midnight Cowboy, I would definitely recommend it. It is a really interesting pocket of US cinema. I want to watch more stuff from it. Like, some of the films are kind of lost on me. Like, I wasn't huge into Hi Mom, but there's other films from that era that I am really into. Quentin Tarantino does talk about that era quite a bit in his book, Cinema Speculation. I haven't read it all because I was kind of pissed off. I opened it, and then he just starts spoiling a lot of movies I haven't seen, so I just closed it again. I was like, I don't want to read that. So, yeah, that's Cinema Speculation in a nutshell. But, yeah, unless you have anything else about Midnight Cowboy, I reckon we
one little tidbit. You'll be shocked to find out, Harry, that this film was banned in Ireland when it was released in 1969.
Oh, what?
Yeah, it was not released in Ireland until 1971, and the book that the film is based on was also banned upon its release. So, yeah, that's the era of this is what we're doing in this country, man. Yeah, I tell you.
So we were just talking about the end of year awards, and I was saying maybe it's self-indulgent, I know, but awards are self-indulgent.
Yeah, of course.
I was like, why don't we do a best recurring joke? And now that fucking has to be in it, doesn't it?
I think
Ireland banning every movie ever.
Being the most conservative country in the world.
Oh, we suck. We suck so much. But yeah, the film starts with Joe Buck, played by Jon Voight, getting ready. As well, kind of funny, separating the artist from the art. Clearly a very homophobic man in real life. I wonder if he knows he played a gay man.
Yeah.
But he's getting ready.
He doesn't realise.
He wears a cowboy outfit because he's from, I don't know if he's from Texas, but he's certainly from near Texas, because we go through Texas at one point on the bus. He's getting ready and everybody's talking at me plays. One thing I love about this era of US cinema is most big films or most successful films have like that one banger, and for this is everybody's talking.
Apparently this was also just like, this was just a kind of a, because it comes up a few times in the film, the song, and it was kind of initially put in just as like a what would you call it, like a kind of a stopgap, like they just kind of put it in there just to kind of, okay, we'll decide on something a bit later, but then it just worked so well that they were like, oh fuck it, we'll just keep it in.
Suits every scene.
Yeah, it does. It really, really works. Like.
And yeah, he walks down to this local diner where he's kind of looking to get paid, and they all kind of fob him off, and he's like, all right, well, forget you guys. I'm getting on the bus. I'm heading off. He gets on the bus in his cowboy outfit with his radio, and he's listening to his radio. And just an interesting thing, every time they go through a different state, the radio station changes. On the bus, he kind of befriends a woman and her young daughter when he gives the young daughter gum because she gets travel sickness. and he tells the woman that he's off to New York. And on this bus journey as well, we pass a lot of things, and when we pass these things, he keeps either getting flashbacks or at one point he just falls asleep and dreams of a thing. But they first of all they pass a house, and he has a flashback to his grandmother basically kicking him out the house because she has a new lover at home, and she sends him on his merry way. He was also dressed as a cowboy back then. So they pass a water tower on the bus, and it says in graffiti on the side of it, "Crazy Ann loves Joe Buck." And then he has another flashback, basically just thinking of different times with her. One moment in bed as well. This film is it's not afraid to show you what happens in bed, but
No.
obviously because it's still the 60s, a lot of stuff was definitely cut. But that being said, it is an X-rated movie, so there are some things that were kept in. But he wakes up from this flashback and he sees that the young girl and her mother are gone, and some old man has taken their seat. So he tries to befriend him, but the guy kind of stops listening to him after a while. And then an old woman sits next to him, and she's not very nice either. And he drifts off to sleep again, and he has another dream then of his being left off with his grandmother, clearly for the first time. He's been left on her porch, and she kind of takes him in. And she was quite loving to him, but when he was walking to that diner earlier, we did see a flashback of him kind of giving her a massage when he was a kid.
Yeah.
And there was definitely connotations there as to maybe that's where his career all started, shall we say. But he wakes up again after this flashback, and all of a sudden his radio is playing a New York radio station. He looks outside, he sees the Statue of Liberty, and he realizes he's in New York. And just again, a funny thing, on the radio they're talking about what is your ideal of the
Yeah, I was
perfect
about
man.
to say that.
And our boy, big handsome Gary Cooper gets a reference, but as a part of a joke.
Yeah.
She's like, "Oh, my ideal man is Gary Cooper because he's dead."
And it just plays right into like the whole arc we've been doing on the podcast the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, big handsome Gary Cooper making a triumphant comeback to the podcast.
Yeah, 100% fair play to him. So yeah, Joe Buck finally arrives in New York City. He moves into this fairly small but like fairly alright looking apartment, and he starts to unpack.
Yeah, I take it.
Yeah, it's not bad. He rips up a gambling ticket that he obviously didn't win, and he starts walking through the city, and we hear everybody's talking again, so it makes its return. Needle drop there. And then he starts to go around. So he asks the woman where the Statue of Liberty is. He's obviously trying to get her business, let's say, because he's a working man.
Mm-hmm.
So he tries to flirt with her. She initially doesn't think that he's even like asking a real question there. And then she eventually cottons on to what he's getting at, and then she kind of just walks off and goes into the apartment. Then he flirts with another woman called Cass, and well, success for him because she invites him up to her I don't know, it's her apartment or a hotel. I think it was a hotel room.
It's a hotel.
Yeah, a hotel room. Yeah. So yeah, it's a funny scene then. So she's on the phone in the apartment, and they're starting to get ready, and then she's on the phone to her partner, her boyfriend, and she puts their dog on the phone to them while they're it's a pretty funny scene while the two of them are kind of doing their own business, and then once they get off, then they go and they have sex, and then he tells her he's a hustler, and she's like, oh well, fair enough, person's got to make a living in this life, and then it's pretty funny because he ends up giving her $20. Yeah.
Joe is a real sympathetic character in this, but he just seems to have sympathy for everyone. It's really noticeable that like the film, ultimately the city in New York, without getting into spoilers, chews Joe up. Let's just say, but when he first gets there, he's so like bright-eyed and
he's a deer in the headlights. Yeah,
like when he's walking in the street, he finds a guy face down. And he kind of goes to help him, but then he spots that so many people around him are just ignoring him. So he thinks that's the norm. Yeah. So he ignores him. Again, with the first woman who he tried to talk to, he so kindly asked her, like, oh, where's the Statue of Liberty? And she ignored him. And most people would take that as, like, fuck off. But he just follows her and goes, oh, I don't think you heard me. So he's, like, slowly but surely realizing that...
not the most welcoming of scenes.
Yeah, he's maybe not cut out. Maybe he's a little too friendly for the Big Apple because she's like, oh, I need money for a taxi, and he's like, oh well, I was gonna ask you for money. I
I
I
provided a service.
yeah. When I said I was a hustler, I don't know if you were listening to me. And then she breaks down. She was like, "What do you think I am? Like, you think I have to pay for sex or whatever?" And he's like, "No, no, no, that's not at all what I think." And he's like, "How much is your taxi?" And he's like, he goes rooting for like, he's like a 5 or 10, and he only has 20. So he's like, 20, and he gives her the 20. And again, there's so many moments in this film where he basically people just take advantage of his kindness,
Yeah,
but to him it's not kindness. To him it's the norm.
yeah, because he's used to what we've all heard of the southern hospitality. He's used to like everyone
Yeah.
looking out for your neighbor and stuff like that. So when he gets to the big city and it's pretty much everyone for themselves, let's be honest, and he'll find that out very quickly. Yeah, he does struggle to acclimatise to it. But yeah, he gets talking to a guy at the bar, and turns out his name is Rizzo. What's his name? Is
It's either Rizzo,
Enri- in,
Ratzo, or Rico,
yeah,
depending on how well you get on with him.
Enrico Rizzo, but yeah, he likes his friends to call him Rizzo. But unfortunately for Rizzo, people, well, this one woman in particular, kind of an androgynous person. I think it's yeah, maybe not a woman, but it's definitely an androgynous person. This person gets
Their name
talking
is
to him.
Jackie, anyway.
Yeah, Jackie. Yeah, so Jackie kind of has a confrontation with Rizzo, and they christen him with the name Ratso, which unfortunately would stick for him.
Yeah,
So
Dustin Hoffman is quite like
it
rat-like.
does, yeah, it does have a kind of a rat-like face. So it's interesting the film does very much play into that. Just as an aside, apparently one of the things that Dustin Hoffman, because The Graduate came out, which is obviously a very different film. I haven't actually seen it, but I know what it's about.
Oh, class film again.
Yeah, well,
Another late '60s film where, yeah, I'm convinced that Paul Simon scammed the people who made that movie, because it's just here's to you, Mrs. Robinson, over and over again. But it says like soundtrack by Paul Simon. Like, no, he gave you one song
one
actually,
stock.
but they just had to keep playing the song for the whole movie because it was the only song he gave them. So great.
But yeah, as an aside to that, so obviously that was such a successful film. But as Hollywood tends to do, when you give a good performance in one area, they kind of try and pigeonhole you. So he's like, no, I need to kind of get out
Yeah.
of that box. So I need to like. He was really interested in this role, but again, people were saying, oh no, he's not right for the role. So what he did was he asked an executive, could he meet him on some street in New York. The executive was there waiting, not paying attention to this homeless guy who was standing 10 feet away from them, not giving them the time of day. And then this homeless guy walks up, and yeah, it's Dustin Hoffman. So he's like, listen, that just proves to you that I can play this role, because you were literally treating me like shit and you weren't even. So, like, you didn't even recognize me. So there you go. And he
John Krasinski did something similar with The Office. I don't
did
know
he?
if you know about
No, I
that.
don't know.
Yeah, so he had to cut his hair for a film, but he went to the producers of The Office and said, like, "Do you mind if I wear a wig for the last 2 episodes of this season?" And they were like, "No, we'd know if you wore a wig." So he cut his hair anyway, wore a wig to the guy's office, went back and said, "Do you mind if I cut my hair?" And the guy was like, "I'd know if you wore a wig," and he just took the wig off.
Brilliant. That's so good.
Yeah.
Fair play, fair play. Yeah, but yeah, he would also go around wearing pebbles in his shoes because Ratso has a bit of a limp. So that was a way for Hoffman, and he is ever the method actor. It's a great line, by the way. Again, just as another aside, sorry, before we get back into the main narrative. John Schlesinger, the only other film of his I've seen is Marathon Man. It's really, really good. Dustin Hoffman is in that too. But there's this great kind of anecdote. I think I might have mentioned it to you before, where there's this interrogation scene that Laurence Olivier is performing an interrogation
Oh
of
yeah,
Dustin
yeah,
Hoffman
yeah.
in a dentist's office. Pretty gruesome scene, to be honest.
Great scene, great scene.
You've seen it, have you? You've seen Marathon Man?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So Dustin Hoffman says, he gets talking to Laurence Olivier backstage, and Olivier says to him, "Oh, like, why are you looking so tired?" He says, "Oh, I've been up for three days because his character had been up for 3 days straight at this point." He's like, "Okay, I've been up for the last 3 days, just getting ready for the scene." And Olivier says to him, "My dear boy, why don't you just try acting?" It's so good. But yeah, anyway, sorry about those asides. Yeah, so Hoffman does have quite the rat-like face. Is the long and the short of it.
Yeah, so Rizzo basically says he says in so many words to Rizzo that yeah, he is a sex worker, and Rizzo's like, "Oh, okay. Well, like maybe you need management." And he's like, "Oh, maybe I do." And he then convinces him that a guy that he knows, O'Daniel,
Yeah.
is the biggest manager of that business in New York, and he knows him, and he'll be able to set up a meeting between the two. And he's like, "Oh my god, like what do I have to do to thank you?" And meanwhile, your one Jackie comes over and basically warns him that Rizzo's going to steal him for all his money. But he doesn't listen to Jackie. The two of them go for a walk, and Rizzo convinces him that he needs to give him $10 for the service he's provided so far, whatever the fuck that is, and then he has to give him $10 when they get to O'Daniel as well, because as good as it is for him and O'Daniel, Rizzo needs to get something out of it, because as you said, he has a limp, he struggles to walk, and there's no need for him to walk to that side of town and put himself under that much strain for nothing. So he's like, of course I will, and he goes with him then to O'Daniel's, where when they get up the lift, Rizzo just starts like tweaking out, and he's like, okay, I need the other tenner now, and he's like, yeah, I'll try and find it, and he's like, no, and he's trying to like call the lift back up again, and you can tell he's just trying to get the fuck out of there. There's some sort of scam going on here. Definitely. He gets the tenner, he gets in the lift, and he starts giving out to the lift guy for taking so long. Meanwhile, just chirpy old Joe Buck walks into O'Daniel's room, and O'Daniel is a total fucking creep. He is an absolute sleaze bag, shall we say. He starts making all sorts of bizarre references and connotations, and Joe Buck is just kind of like, yeah, if this is what you guys do. And then he gives him a bit of a pep talk, and he's like, oh, right, okay, let's get to business. And he's like, get on your knees. And he's like, what? He's like, I want you to get on your knees. We'll both get on our knees. And he was like, what? And he gets on his knees, and he makes Joe get down on his knees, and then the toilet door opens, and there's all sorts of Jesus memorabilia all over it, like all flashing, lighting up, and Joe has, again, just some sort of PTSD thing where he's thinking about the day that he obviously got baptized, and it just sends him spiraling, and he just runs, he legs it out of the place, scares the bejesus out of him, and he is so angry. But again, the editing is so good, because basically it's him running out of O'Daniel's, intercut with him having, like, basically being terrified of the Catholic Church, but also him in these black and white scenes hunting down and killing, well, he doesn't actually kill him, but hunting down and trying to kill Rizzo in black and white. And he's just running and running and running. And the next day he wakes up absolutely terrified, and he then decides, you know what, fuck it, I'll dust myself off. And he goes out walking, and then again, great editing. He's walking down the street, and it just goes night, day, day. And obviously time has passed, and then when he goes back to his apartment, he's locked out, and all of his belongings are in there, even his beloved cow print suitcase, because he can't afford to pay his rent, because he gave the last of his money to Rizzo. Yeah. So he goes out for lunch, sits with this bizarre woman and her child, spills ketchup all over himself, and then he heads out to a cinema that night.
Yeah, so he has agreed to meet this younger guy at the cinema, played by Bob Balaban, by the way, the legendary Bob Balaban. Yeah. So obviously he has a client now. So this young guy, who I think it's pretty obvious doesn't have much sexual experience, starts this kind of very kind of he very kind of tries to put his arm around Joe, and like he's kind of unsure, and then eventually then he starts to kiss him, and then he lowers himself down. Joe kind of goes back, and he starts to kind of remember his ex girlfriend, or his previous girlfriend back home, who loved him. So it's kind of like he's kind of trying to block out what is actually happening with his previous with a kind of a happier memory, let's say. But then we cut to the bathroom, and the young guy is throwing up. Joe obviously helps him a little bit, and then he admits, look, I can't pay you, I don't have any money. Joe gets very aggressive, takes his watch, and the guy's like, no, please don't take my watch, my mom's going to kill me, please don't take my watch. And then again, Joe's quite a softie, so instead of doing what most people would do at this point, which is either beat the person up or steal something expensive that they own, he just kind of gives it back and he walks off. And as he's walking off, he goes past a diner and he spots Rizzo in the window. And I love how he plays this, Jon Voight. There's a genuine moment of like happiness that he sees Rizzo. And then it's like, oh, fuck,
it's like
this.
The one familiar face.
Yeah, it's like happiness that's like, all right, finally someone. For about 4 or 5 seconds, and it's like, oh shit, that guy has stolen my money. So he goes in and he confronts him.
Yeah, he confronts Rizzo, and Rizzo gets all defensive. He's like, here, take all the money I have. And he throws out 64 cents and half a cigarette. And again, Joe doesn't even take that. He takes the half a cigarette, lights it, and throws it out. And he's like, oh, man. And he's just upset. So he walks out, and then Ratso feels bad and follows him, and he's like, okay, hang on. I'll tell you what, why don't you crash with me for a bit? I feel bad. And he's like, oh, they have to begin with anyway, they have a real love-hate relationship. But
Yeah.
he begrudgingly accepts Rizzo's invitation back to Rizzo's casa, shall we say, his Mojo Dojo casa house, which is in fact an old, empty, dilapidated apartment building. They get there, and there's a giant ice cooler just sat there at the bottom of the stairs, of like the 3 flights of stairs, and he asks Joe to carry it up for him because obviously he's got a limp, and Joe accepts. And as he's bringing it up, he's like, "Oh yeah, that way if we have any valuables, we can put them in so that the roaches don't get them." I was like, "Oh my god, what sort of a shithole does he live in?"
Yeah.
And they get up there, and again, Rizzo's like, "Oh, you seem tired. Why don't you sleep over here?" And he goes over to this shitty mesh spare single bed, and Joe's like, "Yeah, sure." And he just gets into Rizzo's bed instead, and he goes to fall asleep, and he has a nightmare of basically him and Crazy Ann, his ex, were in a car one night. They were having sex, and then a mob of guys showed up, dragged them to an old abandoned house, and sexually assaulted both of them. And then the cops came, and she was clearly scarred from it because all she could say is, "You're the only one. He's the one. He's the one." Then he wakes up, and that was the dream I was talking about earlier that Rizzo kept appearing in. So it's just interesting that such a traumatic dream, Rizzo's face just keeps popping up. But he wakes up then in a sweat, and he's freaking out, and his boots are off, and he's terrified. And Rizzo's like, "Oh, I took them off so you could sleep better." And then he just basically tells Ratso straight up, he's like, "Do you know, if I found you the night that the O'Daniel incident happened, I would have killed you in the street." And Rizzo's like, "Right, well, it's good to know you have that killer instinct in you." So,
and he calls him Ratso
because,
as well.
then,
Sorry, go on.
no, just then the two of them then strike up a bit of a partnership.
Yeah, I was going to say, because even at that moment, he calls him Ratso, and Ratso's like, "Please, in my own apartment, just call me Rizzo. Just call me Ratso wherever else you want it, but in my own apartment, please just call me Rizzo." And again, Joe's like, "Yeah, okay, that's actually fair enough. Fair enough." But they're both.
It's worth noting as well that Rizzo at this point was saying that he's got a really bad cough, and he's just been coughing the whole film.
Yeah, 100%. And also Rizzo in particular in this scene, but also later on in the film, Joe as well. They both, like I said at the start, they make quite homophobic remarks, but I think it's obvious that that's coming from a place of self-hatred, whatever you want to call it, very deep-rooted kind of repulsion. Again, obviously they shouldn't feel that way, but it's the 60s after all, so I think it's pretty obvious what the film is going for there. So they then, like I said, strike up a bit of a partnership. So they go around, they kind of cook up this scam where Ratso obviously has a bit of a reputation for theft, so he goes and he looks like he's going to steal fruit, and then he gets into an argument with the stall owner, so that gives Joe the opportunity then to go and steal some fruit. Joe tells Ratso, or Ratso tells Joe, beg your pardon, that everyone's laughing at the cowboy suit. Like, you're a joke here. Like, no one's gonna kind of acquire your services if you go around dressing like that. You're known. This is New York City, for God's sake. Then Joe mentions Crazy Annie. Again, the flashbacks. He's like, Crazy Annie sent away as proof that women go crazy for me when I wear a cowboy suit. But obviously that's Texas and this is New York City. They do steal a radio from a laundromat, so again they've quite a few little scams on the go here. They steal a radio from a laundromat, and they steal polish from a shoe shine stand. Pretty funny scene that is, because they look like they're stealing the shoe shine scene, then Ratso just looks up and a policeman's after coming over and sitting down. So obviously to keep up the charade, not to get busted, he has to shoe shine the policeman's shoes, and then just as that happens, another guy comes over. So poor Ratso had to keep up the act for quite a long time, it would look like there. But they cancel a male companion appointment for this woman in a hotel who had an appointment with this guy, and then they go to that very same hotel, and yeah, they go looking for a client for Joe.
Yeah, and outside of the Hotel Berkeley, Rizzo starts daydreaming
Yeah,
because his whole thing is he wants to get to Florida. His
yeah,
dream is to live in
Florida.
Florida. He went on this whole rant earlier about how the only two things that humans need are sunlight and coconut milk. He just wants to live in Florida. So he's daydreaming, as I said earlier, about him and Joe living together in Florida. And at first they're running together shirtless on the beach. And then they're sat by the pool getting foot massages. And then Rizzo starts scamming old ladies and women are flocking to him. And then as he kind of comes back from his dream, he just sees the woman in the lobby slap Joe across the face. And the two guys in the lobby grab him and throw him out of the hotel. He obviously did not pull off
Scam.
the deed, shall we
Yeah,
say? He didn't even make it out of the lobby, but yeah. Eventually, they get so desperate that they pawn off Joe's radio. He's quite distraught, and Joe then goes out and realizes it's a really powerful scene where he goes out afterwards and he just sees that New York is not at all what he dreamed of it.
yeah,
Like when he first got there, he was seeing like the lavish women in like expensive dresses and pearls and walking dogs and everybody's talking at him. But now he's all he can see is like homelessness and drug addicts and people literally just crying in the street. That's all he can see. That's all he's surrounded with, and he realizes maybe New York isn't all it's cooked up to be. But they he gets back then he gets home after donating blood for money and buying a couple of groceries, and Rizzo is like way worse than he was before. He's shivering, he's in a cold sweat, and he says well, first of all, he pretends it's nothing, and then Joe realizes that he's got a really big new jacket, and he's like, how the hell did you get that? You stole it from a homeless man, didn't you? And he's like, no, no. And he's like, that guy's probably out there freezing to death. And he's like, well, I stole it for you because it's too big for me. So that's his justification for stealing from a homeless man. But they go out another day and they come back and there's people. It looks like government people are kind of snooping around the old building, so they can't go home just yet. So they go out to the graveyard where they visit Rizzo's dad. Again, just Rizzo steals flowers from someone's grave just to give to his dad's grave. And yeah, as terrible a person as Rizzo is, he is definitely a more sympathetic character as the film goes
yeah,
on. I think Dustin Hoffman plays it really well, where you can just tell that as selfish and as unkind as the guy is, there's something about him, the way that Dustin Hoffman plays him, where you kind of do want to see him just get back on his feet. Literally, just get back on his feet.
100%. Yeah. So then they go to eat at a diner after the graveyard, and they're kind of sitting down having a meal, whatever they can afford, obviously with the blood that Joe donated. But then a couple of people walk over, a guy and a girl walk over and just randomly take Joe's photo.
Yeah.
Pretty weird. Then they take out a piece of paper and like talk about a party. Listen, there's a party over on such and such street later on tonight. You should come. Rizzo was hurt when he realizes he wasn't invited, and then but Joe was like, "Listen, I'm not going. If you're not going, we're gonna go there. I'm gonna say I can't come in if you can't come in." So nice little bit of friendship on there, obviously. But yeah, like it's worth saying, by the way, at this point, Rizzo looks very, very sick. That
Yeah.
cough has not dissipated whatsoever at this point. But yeah, they get to the building, and Rizzo gets a bit self-conscious, so he starts to kind of comb his hair. I'm not sure that's all it's going to take, Rizzo, to be honest with you, pal, but there we go. So they enter, and it's clearly based on Andy Warhol parties, if anyone's heard of those. Like very, very, like, very kind of obscure imagery, like very
Abstract.
yeah, abstract. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. Yes, thank you. Very, very abstract. Very like kind of anything you could think of, and but also things you can't ever have thought of. If that makes sense as well. Like it's very, very, very like random stuff. They go around. Live music is being played. There's lots of like cameras. People are talking to the cameras. People are getting their photos taken from cameras. People are performing for cameras. Rizzo calls them all wackos. Obviously, he's never seen anything like this in his life, and that's fair enough, to be honest. Maybe lots of interesting cats here. Let's be honest. But yeah, Joe's like Joe. People come up to Joe and say, "Look, help yourself to some food and drink. Enjoy yourself." So Joe is clearly he's clearly very entranced by everything. I think this is what he kind of envisioned New York would be. He kind of thought that he'd be at these kind of parties every week, every weekend, and it's only now, obviously, that he is finally kind of getting to experience the more artful side of New York, whereas Rizzo just thinks it's a whole load of nonsense.
Yeah, it's an opportunity to just take stuff.
Yeah, he just starts stealing food. He just gets angry with people.
He's stealing food from the free food stand, and the woman says, like, "Why are you robbing that? It's free." He's like, "Well, if it's free, then it's not stealing."
He has a point, to be fair, though. But
yeah. Joe has borrowed a cigarette off a girl, and you can see that everyone around him's on drugs. So I think it's implied that might not have been a tobacco cigarette, because he starts tripping balls.
Yeah, Joe then starts to flirt with this girl, and good for Joe. She goes into a dark room with her, and obviously where photos are being developed and stuff. But yeah, fair play to him, because he has a client. Yeah, he got himself a client.
Yeah, he kisses her and then goes back out into the party, and Rizzo sees all this, and Rizzo's like, "Well, I'm his manager, and it's $20 for his services.
Plus $1 for taxi fare.
Okay, no worries. Plus my taxi fare. Absolutely fucking no. No way. Okay, my taxi's only $1. Fine." So she pays him the taxi fare, and the two of them go down this really long staircase, and they start making out. And she's like, "Oh, what's your name?" And he's like, "Joe." And she's like, "Ah, good one. You could just be anyone." And then Rizzo just collapses and falls down this giant staircase, hits the deck hard. And Joe straight away, kind of, even in his tripping balls state, comes back for a minute, and he's like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And Rizzo is just thinking about the money. He's like, "No, I'm fine. Just go on ahead. I'll survive. I'll get up and walk." And Joe's like, "You can't even stand. Like, what are you talking about? You need the banister to stay up." And he's like, "I'm fine. Just go provide the service." So Joe gets in the car with her, and he's like calling. He's like, "Hey!" to Rizzo. He's just a happy country boy. And they go back to this woman's place, and smash cut. He couldn't get it up, and that's never happened to him before. But he's very embarrassed, and she's like, "Don't worry about it. Like, shit happens." And then she kind of starts making jokes that he couldn't get it up. But she's like, "Well, I'm just imagining like a policeman without his stick, or basically he couldn't provide his job." And she offers to play board games with him instead, which is just kind of nice. It's just a nice scene.
Yeah, it's a nice
clearly similar enough to Terry in On the Waterfront, which is what we covered last week. He's clearly a naive and at some points childlike character. So moments like this where he just kind of gets to enjoy himself are nice, except they play a game where he has to basically spell words with dice, and he struggles with that. He can't even spell the word money, because there's a sign outside his apartment that spells money, MONEY, but the light on the E isn't turned on, so he can only see MONY, so he thinks that's how you spell money. So he struggles with that, and then he gets money, and then he's like, "Oh, now I have to find a word that begins with Y." And she said, "It can be a word that ends with Y. You know, hey, bay, lay,
gay. Yeah.
Are you gay? Is that why you couldn't get it up? It's okay if it is." And he gets all defensive, and he throws her on the bed, and then they have sex.
And that's very interesting, because as soon as she brings up the fact that he might be gay, that almost seems to turn him on. That seems to be the thing that actually allows him to perform then. So the following day, her name is Shirley, it turns out, and she sets up an appointment with her friend for Joe to he has another new client now thanks to Shirley. So seems that he's on the up and up. His career is finally beginning to take off. So she pays him and they shake hands. There's quite a funny moment there. He goes back to Rizzo's and he says, "Listen, good news, we're not going to have to steal anymore. Have another appointment next Thursday, so things are looking up for us, pal." But Rizzo gets upset, so Joe puts him to bed. Rizzo is looking like death at this point. He looks so bad.
And he says he can't use his other leg now. He's lost the feeling in both his legs.
Yeah. So Joe's like, he's panicking, obviously. He wants to get him to a doctor, but Rizzo says, no, all we need to do is just get on a bus to Florida. That'll sort me right out. That's all we need to do. Just a bit of warm weather is all I need. So Joe tries calling Shirley, the client, for help, because obviously she has a bit of money on her, but she's not there. He can't get through to her. So he comes across this paper salesman guy in the street, and this guy asks Joe to dinner, and obviously, yeah, Joe sees an opportunity to make some cash, so he goes to the guy's hotel to try and make some money to help Rizzo. The guy asks Joe though to leave to come back tomorrow, but the guy, yeah, it's quite a sad scene. This guy, very, 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 very repulsed by the fact that a very, very clearly closeted gay guy, but he's very shameful of the fact that he is gay. And obviously Joe probably doesn't put two and two together, but he is in the same situation, obviously. But instead of kind of showing some compassion, which is actually what he's doing throughout the film, this is the first time where we've seen, and obviously I'm sure that Rizzo's condition is playing on his mind as well, but this is the first time we've seen Joe kind of take out his own kind of shame, his own underlying shame on another gay guy. So it's not the best situation.
Yeah, so Joe throughout this film has always pulled his punches.
Yeah.
But again, just another great bit of editing. This scene is intercut with the following day, him dragging Rizzo from his bed to the bus to Florida from the abandoned house, because that's obviously what his motivations are. That scene is intercut with him begging the guy for money. The guy gives him a necklace of St. Christopher for good luck. And he's like, I don't need luck. I just need money. And the guy gives him a $5. And he's like, come on now. I need $57. It's like, you don't give me a $5. And the guy's like, it's all I have. But then he stands in front of a drawer. So he obviously knows that he has more money. Yeah. And then Joe gets desperate because in his head, Rizzo's dying. Yeah. And he's just listening to Rizzo. All Rizzo needs is the sunlight, so he needs to get him to Florida to save his friend. So what does he do? He beats the fuck out of the guy, takes his money, and then the guy reaches for the phone. And then, yeah, as you said, it's a really sad scene because, as I said, like, Joe is such a sympathetic character. To make sure that they get away with it, he takes the phone and he just shoves it into the guy's mouth. And, then we literally cut to them on the bus. And he's telling Rizzo what happened, and Rizzo's like, did you kill the guy? There's blood on your shirt. And he's like, I don't want to talk about it. Really sad scene. And then again, just excellent mirroring. Yeah. With obviously the happy-go-lucky, everybody's talking at me. Yeah. Him on his way to New York. This desperate, depraved, he's been chewed up and now spat out by New York bus journey back home. Yeah. Some of the best mirroring you'll see.
Yeah, and Rizzo, beg your pardon. He's really struggling. But yeah, it turns out that he says that he's wet to see. He starts crying and he's like, I'm after waiting to see. And Joe kind of tries to play it off and he starts actually laughing. Cracks a joke about what's just going on. So he's obviously trying to help Rizzo and he's trying to make him not feel as bad. But yeah, once they get into Florida, the first time in the movie, Joe changes his outfit for the first time, so he gets out of the cowboy outfit into like civilian clothes, the regular civilian clothes. Yeah. So it's almost like he's shedding that part of his life.
He throws the cowboy outfit in the bin.
Yeah, he's shedding that part of his life, and he's becoming kind of. It's definitely implied as well that that's the end of his working days as well. So he talks about how he's going to get a job. He's going to quit hustling, maybe work outdoors. So. He's telling Rico on the bus when they get back on the bus on the continual journey, he's telling Rico, I'm going to get a job, I'm going to quit hustling. But then the camera pans over and we see Rico's face, and yeah, he's passed away.
Yeah, and it's worth noting as well, his final words were "Thank you, Joe."
Yeah.
And we see then he freaks out, the bus pulls in, the bus driver goes down, sees that the guy's dead, and just says, well, cover his eyes, man. Yeah, he's like, oh, okay. And he doesn't know what to do. He's like, tears in his eyes. He covers Rizzo's eyes, and the bus driver goes back up to the top of the bus and says, "Don't worry, guys, it's no big deal. We'll be in Miami in a couple of minutes." And the bus takes off, and everybody's staring back at them as Joe cries, holding Rizzo on the back of the bus, and then we just start to see in the of the window of the bus that they are starting to pull into Florida, into Miami, as he's holding him.
Poor Rizzo.
The end.
Yeah.
Fuck you know. Yeah, this movie is absolutely amazing. I think it's one of the best picture winners of the 60s. It's such a interesting and timely pick for me for best picture. We've said it so many times. The Oscars is they rarely get it right, but I think just it's such a time capsule of what American cinema was that this won best picture at the time. And Jon Voight is amazing in this movie. Joe Buck is such a likable, sympathetic character. Even when he's doing the odd heinous thing, you just feel bad for him. As well, Dustin Hoffman plays Rizzo so well. The two performances are incredible. Rizzo, again, he starts off so irredeemable, so unlikable, so slimy, and by the end you just can't help but sympathize for him. You're just like, fuck. Like, I just wanted to see them get to Florida and succeed, but not the case. I thought this was fantastic. I gave it 4 stars. It's definitely a motivation for me to watch more late 60s, early 70s American cinema, because this was right up my alley. I said already, I've seen The Graduate. Graduate's fantastic, and there's a few others from that era that I really like, and a few others that I really need to see. But overall, I was a big fan of Midnight Cowboy. How about you?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars. But don't read too much into that rating. I did really enjoy it. It's definitely a really interesting and bold look at the kind of the culture that existed in New York City at the time and in America in general, where obviously you had all these anti-gay laws, anti-gay sentiments and stuff. So people obviously couldn't be who they were, but also just in general. Just in general, also, whether you, leaving that stuff aside, leaving the queer subtext aside, just in general, the kind of what's the word I'm looking for? The kind of attitudes that people had at the time, where it's just like, because of, like you said, the Vietnam War, you had all that going on as well. So all that kind of anti-establishment stuff, all the just the fuck the man, all that kind of thing. Really interesting. I think great performance, like you said, from Jon Voight and Dustin Hoffman. The dream sequences are really well done. I love the recurring needle drop. Everybody's talking. It's really well utilized. But the dream sequences in particular, like I said, they're really well edited, because they, even how quick they are, how kind of you really have to pay attention during them to kind of get everything the film is trying to tell at the time. Because obviously, like, there's the sexual assault scene that they had that obviously Joe Buck was a victim of, or survivor of, but also it's very implied that there's a kind of weird kind of relationship going on with his grandma that obviously, like you said, was the basis of maybe his career that he would go on to have. And it's just it's a very weird dynamic that was going on there. So the film, those edited kind of dream sequences in particular, the way they're edited, really kind of convey everything the film wants to, even how choppy they are. It's very intentional from that point of view. But no, I really enjoyed it. It's one of the most bold kind of Oscar winner, best picture winners from the time period, and it's like I said, the Academy gets a lot wrong. So when they get something right, fair play to them for that. Like, it's not the most traditional best picture winner, but maybe it stands out all the more for that.
Yeah, worth noting, like, it's not the most traditional winner, but just interesting that we're covering this in a Nora one this year. Just an interesting parallel.
That's true, yeah.
And as far as next week, Shane, next week is our 50th episode.
It is
episode
indeed.
Number 50. First of all, the next arc is the Golden Hour Film Podcast World Tour, because we are going to be covering different movies from different countries. I say World Tour. It's 3 European countries, but World Tour, as most European bands would do. But they only go to one outside of Europe. But funnily enough, we are actually starting our world tour with Japan. Yes, episode 50 of the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Have you seen this movie before?
I've seen bits of it. I haven't seen the whole thing all the way through.
Yeah, holy shit, you're about to get your mind blown.
Yeah.
It is a strong contender for the greatest movie ever made, Seven Samurai. Akira Kurosawa's debut on the podcast, one of my favorite directors ever. This is an excuse for me now to watch loads of Akira Kurosawa movies between now and then. I've already seen a lot of them. I've seen a lot of them, but I cannot wait to watch more because, I'm incredibly looking forward to covering Akira Kurosawa's magnum opus, Seven Samurai. It's a long L film, don't get me wrong, so if you haven't seen it, it's worth it, trust me. It is so worth it. It is a mammoth of a film, but it is one of the best films ever made. Such a viable contender for the best movie ever made, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I've seen probably 2 sections. I can't remember how long exactly, but for one, I think my dad had it on at one point, and I watched some of it then. This is when I was back like a young kid. Then another point that was on TV maybe at some point, I can't remember exactly. So I watched another bit of it then, but I've never actually seen it the whole way through. And I need to definitely devote like a few hours to just sit down and watch it because it's quite long. But yeah, I'm looking forward to just experiencing it for the first time. Kurosawa was someone. The couple of films I have seen, I've absolutely loved. I think I mentioned it during the kind of what we're hoping to watch this year, back at the start of the year. He was very much on that list of directors I want to watch more of. And the other directors I've already have, of people I want to watch more of, I definitely already have. Howard Hawks, Joseph L. Mankiewicz. But Kurosawa was like the guy that I really, really, more than anyone, I really, really want to get into more of his stuff. So this podcast is, as I always say, a great excuse for me to do just that.
Yeah, for me, he is like the foreign language equivalent to like my Hitchcock in that, like, I just want to watch all his movies, and he has lots of movies, which makes it arguably more of a fun challenge.
Yeah.
But I've never seen a bad Kurosawa movie, and I look forward to that. As far as the world tour goes, we are going to be going from Japan to Poland, then France, and then who could it be? Over to Sweden. Looking forward to the world tour of the Golden Hour Film Podcast, and then we have another fun arc that we've already planned as well. The next 2 months, let's just say, we are going to be maybe righting a few wrongs of the podcast. Covering a few things that we haven't covered enough, and I look forward to it very much. But in the meantime, that was Academy Classics, another fun arc on the podcast. 4 Best Picture winners. Again, great that 3 of them I'd never seen before, because I feel like a lot of the arcs, I've seen a lot of the films. Same with yourself. You'd only seen one of them, hadn't you?
Of which of the just arc we just did, was it?
Yes.
I had seen The Last Weekend, and that was it.
Yeah. So again, just enjoyable that we're doing these arcs where we haven't seen them all. It's, as you said, a great excuse.
Yeah.
But thank you very much. And next week we'll see you all for episode 50 of the Golden Hour Film Podcast. I've been Harry Bailey.
I've been Shane Mulvaney.
And we'll see you for Seven Samurai. Goodbye.